Hello, and welcome to Fables from the Pickled Quipper. I am your host and master of Dungeons, Phil, and today we are at episode 31. We pick up in the aftermath of the Great Dragon conflict. Somehow, the Hand of Ages survived. Let's find out what happens next.
So, quick recap then of session 30. As we start session 30, can you believe it? Session 31. 3 followed by 1, that's impressive. Session 30 started out in pretty good spirits, I would say. Bullet jumped out of the ground, knocked everyone over, then you guys butchered it. They didn't even get a turn. So after the annihilation of the Bullet and the salvaging of plates, 10 5-pound plates have been stored in the Bullet Corpse cavern. You found a place to set up camp for the first night, and you found this. There was a cavern, like a large cavern that opened up quite wide. A sort of a narrow, maybe 10-foot wide bridge went across a very deep chasm. During the night, out of nowhere, Eska saw a flash of blue lightning streak towards her before she was electrified. It emerged that a blue dragon had appeared in front of you. The dragon attacked. Everyone woke up. A rather chaotic battle ensued. Claire was running around as a crazed field medic. Brought Cassette back up, and Cassette looked over, assessed the situation, and cast sleep on the dragon. And in the intervening period, everyone kind of was deciding, what do we do? Bardor dragged Eska out from underneath the claw, and just as Claire went over to heal her, Eska sort of came to on her own accord. Before anyone really had a chance to react, Eska stood and went to drive her dagger down into the head of the dragon. Unfortunately, all it seemed to do was wake the dragon up, as the dagger failed to find purchase through the thick scales. The dragon said it had made a mistake. Out its head, in front of Silvaris, who stood there, flaming sword in his hand. There was a sort of a nod from Bardor. Dragon said, "Do what you must," and Silvarius dealt a killing blow. And that is where we pick up. Killing blow has been dealt. The dragon has fallen at Silvarius' feet.
Silvarius is standing there with his sword driven down into the skull of the dragon, with the flames burning brightly, and he's kind of paused for a little bit as he's staring down at the corpse, and he utters the words "Hixon," and the intense flames die down, and he pulls his sword out of the dragon's head and is just kind of standing there staring at it. A lot of thought going on in his head right now.
So I'm gonna mumble. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I just start I turn around and I just stumble back to the wall, and I just kind of slouch to the ground.
When Silvarius swung the sword, everyone would have heard a very audible gasp from Claire, and if you looked at her face, you would just see silent tears streaming down her cheeks, and she looks very torn between she's got one hand on Eska, and she looks very torn between wanting to stay and tend to Eska, and her eyes are kind of glued to Silvarius, and it looks like she wants to go to him as well, and it's like she can't quite make up her mind what she wants to do, and she's just kind of frozen on the spot.
What's Cosette up to at this point?
She maybe just kind of hobbled up, and she's going to hobble over, because she's done a lot of, heard a lot about dragons, but this is the first time she's ever seen a dragon, of any size, really. And so she'll just kind of walk up alongside of it and just kind of brush her hand over, just kind of admiring the creature, and I kind of walk up to Silverius, and she doesn't really say anything. She just looks him in the eye and puts a hand on his shoulder, just kind of turns away, kind of walks over to where Claire is. Doesn't really say anything the whole time.
I think Esker's just gonna kneel down, but I think she's just gonna stare forwards at the dragon.
I mean, you are just covered in your own red blood, and then some very dark draconic blood. You know, there's a big tear down in the stomach region of your armor that probably is going to need some sort of repair work to be fully back as it should be. Yeah, you're just paler than usual. I think it's probably safe to say.
Yeah, I think right now, despite the, I don't think it, in some way she's even thinking about that. She's just thinking about, I guess her full fury is focused still on this thing. So I guess she acknowledges it in the sense that she's not really moving, but I guess the adrenaline is still pumping enough that she's fully focused on it. And also on Silvarius.
And Savaris, what do you do next?
When Cosette came up and put her hand on his shoulder, his eye, he kind of he registers, almost snapping to a little bit, and his eye shoots to her, and he stares back at the dragon as she turns and heads over to Claire, and he remains there for his moment and turns toward the party, his face lingering as he keeps staring on the dragon. Heads on over to them, his head finally turning to the rest of the party, approaches everyone and kind of trying to bring himself a little back together. Are you all right? Eska and Cosette especially injured. There's almost a shift in Silvarius, almost like there was a true sense of care, a little bit different than previously.
And you can see as you look at them, Cosette's not really got much blood on her, but her skin has dark scorch marks all over it from where the lightning impacted her. Likewise, I mean, the armor didn't look great at the best of times. It is looking worse. It's, if it wasn't magically imbued, it might have completely fallen apart there. And the shield, where it has the symbol of the waterfall, there's a big sort of black stain going across the center of the shield right now, kind of destroying the symbol of peace.
Seeing so much damage on them, he kind of snaps to kind of again. He's make your way by the fire. Rest and prepare. He hauls over to Bardur. Bardur, come here.
No answer. Just on his own.
Yeah, I think I will have a seat. And she'll slowly start to walk over. And just a refresher, we did a full. I mean, that was kind of. Did everyone get a full rest?
No.
So that was still pretty early into the rest.
Yeah, I guess probably about halfway, give or take.
Eska's gonna sort of scrabble up and wander over to the dragon, and she's just gonna kind of wander around it and look down on it, and she's gonna put her hand onto its body and see if she feels any movement.
Make a perception check.
18.
Okay. You kind of wait for a second, unsure exactly what you want to feel. There doesn't appear to be any movement though.
Is it still warm? Or was it warm?
Not as hot as you, and actually now the coolness of the caves kind of strikes now that battle has gone, and the intensity of the adrenaline rush has kind of passed. The sweat that had come out during the fight feels incredibly cold on your skin. The only sound you hear at the moment is the sound of Cosette gently clinking over to the fire. Everything else is still and eerie.
So she'll stand back up and she'll just give it a couple of sharp kicks in the midsection to see if it reacts. And if not, I'm assuming it's not going to. She will kind of stagger back over to the fire and sort of slump down.
Yeah, there's no reaction. First kick's a little hard, and you kind of, this tough blue dragon hide that you're kicking, and you think there's a chance you might have broken a toe with the first kick.
I go unconscious.
The second one's a little softer, and you hobble back over to the fire. To everyone else, you just hear a soft thud as she kicks the dragon with her little leather boots. There's not really a big impact, although a relatively loud noise in the silence.
Claire kind of coming to a little bit with everyone moving away from her, kind of just blinks a little bit and gives a sniffle, and she just kind of gently lets her shield slide off of her left arm and puts her hammer down with it, and starts patting her little side pouches real quick, and pulls out her prayer wheel, kind of just sidestepping Silvarius, not even really looking at him. She walks over to the dragon's head, and with the prayer wheel in her left hand, she starts to spin it, and there's a delicate gold chain with like an iridescent stone on the end that starts spinning. And she places her right hand on the dragon's forehead and just starts saying some soft chanting in a mixture of Sylvan and Celestial.
What for those who do understand those languages, what's the gist of it?
Essentially, it's just a general well-being prayer of releasing burdens and being free of suffering. And as soon as her prayer ends, she stands back up and tucks the wheel back into her pouch. She kind of just looks around the cave and blinks a lot, just like she's trying to clear her vision. And when she sees Cassette and Eska over by the fire, it's like a little light bulb just kicks back on, and she just lets out like a soft little oh, and she hustles back over to the fire and immediately puts her hands on Eska's forearm and casts Cure Wounds on her. And the whole time she's just muttering, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have done this earlier."
Eska sort of flinches at the contact. I think about all she does is just kind of try and give a thankful nod.
And yeah, that would be 13 hit points back.
Whoa, she's good to go.
Ready to fight another dragon.
Bring it on. She goes and starts kicking the dragon again.
Oh,
And then she's gonna do the same thing. She's gonna walk over to Cassette. Just a level 1 cure wounds for 7 HP back.
It kind of doesn't. She's like kind of zoned into just staring at the fire. But once you like put your hand on her shoulder, she looks up and thanks you. But she's just like kind of like mentally exhausted and physically since never really got to rest. I'm just kind of processing that, but she does kind of shake out of it to thank you. I don't know that she even really realizes. I mean, she knows she's hurting, but she doesn't. She's not like focused on that right now.
So far as he marches over to Bardur. Is Bardur facing outward?
As he's coming over at me, I'm pulling out my flask, and just he'll get closer, and he just sees just like killing it, just draining it away.
This is the first time Bardur's ever imbibed so much after a battle.
Yes, like you might have seen him do a little bit, but like he is like just guzzling it.
As he's walking up, that's not going to waste you, is it?
I'm fine. I'll be fine.
Don't look fine to me.
Just looks at him kind of angrily, but doesn't really say anything.
Pick yourself up. Let us make sure everything is clear.
I should have done that before, shouldn't I have? And then put the cap back on the flask and like I just, rub my beard with my forearm.
Gives him a nod, and Silvaris turns and starts marching to the bridge. And Silvaris just kind of patrols the other side of the cave a little bit. Or his plan is to go across the bridge and patrol just a little bit. He illuminates his sword with a light spell. Just in a patrolling fashion, kind of.
I'll get up and I'll go with him.
yeah. Make perception checks for me.
17.
You kind of look around. You've already experimented briefly and seen that this is a deep chasm that you're walking across. Bridge feels solid. No concerns there. It seems to be sort of a natural bridge rather than anything that's being constructed. And since this is the primary trade route, presumably any wagons that carry trade would have to go across this bridge. So you feel relatively confident that it's not going anywhere. Well outside the light cast by your blade, you see your 3 companions in various states of shock around the fire. It's kind of hard to really pay too much attention to anything else. You keep sort of looking around at the walls, trying to look up to the ceiling, but you keep finding your eyes drawn back to the firelight. Some very defeated-looking companions trying to find warmth from the fire. But you don't see any obvious threats. No second, third, or fourth dragons right now.
Not even like hiding it, so if other people can hear it, whatever. But I'm gonna say out loud, it's my fault. It's all my fault.
Quick response. This was hardly your fault, Bardur.
But it is. If only you knew.
Stops, turns and looks at him. What is that supposed to mean?
Well, I didn't do my job. I could have detected that dragon if I had stopped and thought of just a moment to just detect those sorts of things, but I didn't. And again, I've let a party of mine get ambushed. So it's my fault.
As far as stares at him a little bit and looks back at the dragon and the fire. Looks up towards the ceiling, back at Barder.
It was hardly what we were anticipating.
And he steps up to him and
You performed admirably.
Just shake my head, say shouldn't have had to.
By all accounts, the dragon should not have even been here. It was originally supposed to be a quelling of orcs. It's definitely stranger than I am accustomed to. I don't like here. I can barely see.
Sylvaris starts to walk back past him on the bridge and stops right next to him and
You did not fail us. We all made it out alive. That is all that is truly important. You lament the way you reacted this time. Improve upon it next time.
I'll nod. Just give a bit of a reassuring smile, like that actually kind of helped a little bit, but still looking down.
Sylvaris taps Barder where his flask is, ding ding, and just starts to walk back.
It's a hollow sound.
He stops at the dragon one more time and stares at it for just a couple of seconds and makes his way back to the fire.
And as you stare at it, you notice that dragon's eyes are still open.
Sylvaris kneels down and kind of like gets close to the dragon head. If you were to look at what he was he almost was like looking at it almost like his reflection. And he sort of stares at it and he just reaches his hands out and closes one eye at a time. Again, while his head sort of stays focused on the dragon, he kind of turns his body and takes a step or two and then focuses back where he's heading.
While those two are off, Kleck looks at Eska. Any conversation, or just sort of huddling by the fire?
It's that kind of like she needed a little bit to process, but she does kind of like refocus and kind of get back to just solving the problem at hand. And so she sees Eska's hurt, and she realizes kind of how badly she's hurt. So she will heal herself and then walk up and offer Eska heal as well. Just a level 1 cure wounds on her, and then she'll walk up to Eska and say, "Can I offer you some help?"
I think Eska would just actually probably sort of look up, give a weak smile, but shake her head. And then look back down.
Because that'll just kind of sit down next to her in case she changes her mind, but she just kind of nods.
I kind of stay back, like I'm leaning up against the wall cave.
As they're kind of walking back up, Cosette'll ask, do you think it's safe to stay here?
I'm going to close my eyes for a second and do primeval awareness.
So you close and focus for a moment. And just reach out around you. North, south, east, west. And importantly right now also up and down. Just feeling out for those essences. Possibly some faint elemental vibes. That's it.
What are you doing, Eska?
Eska subtly casts Detect Thoughts.
On the dragon?
No. She's going to first target Silvarius. I can usually, I think, pretty much, because I use my sort of pendant as my arcane focus, she's kind of got used to using it very subtly.
Yeah. And I mean, even the more aware in the group, probably Claire in particular, would have seen you just idly playing with that every now and then anyway.
Yeah.
So doesn't think anything of it. Okay, so
I'm purely just touching surface.
okay, surface thought, Silvarius, please.
What point did you cast that at? Initially walking up, or has he been sitting around for a while, or standing around?
I think once people have settled slightly, so I think once you've got back to the fire and maybe once you've sat down.
So Solaris, he never sat down. He just standing up, tall and proud, and kind of looking around at the just the group and the fire and the dragon. And you catch a lot going through his mind. A little bit of confusion. He's confused by a dragon even being here. They're expecting orcs. Almost like proud confusion. At the actual slaying of the dragon, there was a he kind of thinks back, and or you catch glimpses of just he knows that what he did could have been right, but he still feels off about if it was or not.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like they're battling with each other, like a sense of just defense or like a survival instinct sort of in right now, as he keeps looking around, just trying to be ever present. At the ordeal was very shaking.
I think she would probably let it linger on Silvarius for like 20, 30 seconds and then hit the other guys around the circle for about 10 seconds each, just to see if, just for her own peace of mind, to make sure that there's nothing there that feels weird, that they're kind of thinking how they're acting.
All right, Bador, give a brief snapshot of what you might be thinking about.
I mean, if you looked over at him, he's just sitting back and like his head's against the wall, and he's just kind of like looking up into the ceiling. And basically, it's like one of those flashes where it's like almost like you're having a nightmare. And it goes back and forth between kind of what just happened here, but also you see a party of dwarves in a tunnel. It's kind of a bit more of a narrow tunnel, but you know, in a similar environment as this. That is basically in the middle of like a fight, and there's people that you can't really see that they're fighting, but you can start to see like it, like flashes, almost like just going around, and you can see like various people falling, and yeah, so like he's basically thinking about this battle, and you can tell that like there's a sense of dread, and sadness, regret, and uh, you know he thinks like depending on how far you go, like you can see images of dwarfs pop into his head.
Okay. Yeah, she's not going to push to the point where she would fear people knowing what she's doing. So she's not going to like deep dive. But yeah, just skim over those things that are kind of most pressing, I guess.
And Claire?
Just on the surface, it would be a conglomeration of happiness that everyone is alive, concern, specifically for Eska and Silvarius, but in a different way. And then kind of just a deep-seated sense of sorrow for the whole event that's passed.
And Cosette?
Deep concern for how dull Eska's dagger is. No, I think she's very logical, so I think like she know that had to happen, so the initial emotion of it is probably gone by now. But I think, and you may not get all this with just surface, but I think what she would be feeling is like it's probably the first time that she's seen, really felt like she may not be prepared for this, but also that she's probably not alone in that. So I think kind of a mixture of like concern for us, and so maybe a little bit of fear that we're in over our heads, but also a little bit of more of like maybe we're all. I think she kind of viewed some of the party members as like they're I'm just following them around, and they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of leading, and they're the strength of it, and I'm just kind of the inexperienced tag along. But maybe seeing that everybody else has strengths and weaknesses, and they may be a little bit more similar than she realized. So um, I would say, some relief, but then a little bit of concern as well.
Mm-hmm. So thanks everybody. Sorry for dropping that on you. Detect thoughts is like the worst, but that was
It's good fun.
actually
Yeah,
really
that was
cool.
good. Yeah, that was a fun little like descriptor opportunity.
Yeah, it's good for the listeners too, and for the DM.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. I just feel bad dropping it, but I mean, I obviously don't feel that bad dropping it because I did it, and I did it subtly. But
You sure act like you feel bad.
Officially, you feel bad.
yeah. So Eska will just kind of get up, and she feels kind of like somewhat set at ease, her mind. So she just kind of staggers up and says, I might get a little rest. Let me know when it's time to go. And she'll kind of like go over somewhat into the corner, probably kind of up to the wall, and she's gonna lay down, and she's just gonna kind of like face the wall, and she's actually gonna kind of lift up like the front of her armor and I guess like shirt to see if there's any kind of wound in her, like to see the kind of like scratch in her stomach, if there is one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is. When Claire came over and sort of gave you some healing, the wound scabbed over essentially, but there is still a sizable gouge in the stomach, about an inch thick, 8 inches, in a sort of a curve across the stomach. So just below the ribs, reaching down across towards the belly button. There we go. I've managed to use words. And it's still incredibly tender, surrounded by still damp blood, but it doesn't appear to be actively bleeding anymore.
She kind of like she takes her kind of upper, like her arm that is more in the air, 'cause she's kind of laying on her side, and she just kind of basically, she pulls her shirt back down, but she kind of rests her hand like directly on the wound as she goes to rest.
And I mean,
just
you
just goes into a trance.
and you would know, looking at it, as you sort of start to focus your mind into your trance, that would often be fatal if it weren't for the fact that you had such quick assistance. That should have killed you. And I mean, in addition, you much like Cassette, you have the black char marks across a lot of your skin as well, even under the armor. But not having much experience with that sort of impact, it's hard to know what. Like, it looks bad, but you wouldn't know the severity of it. Whereas a giant gouge through the stomach, you that would have finished you off if it weren't for very rapid care.
Yes, as she rests her hand there and thinks about that, she can't help but just a tiny bit. There's just a few moments where she just kind of smiles grimly before fading into her trance.
So I know Cassette was on watch. I don't remember who did the first watch.
I think I was on watch with Cassette,
Bardur.
right? And that's why it hit both of us.
Yes, you two were on watch.
Bardur did the first watch, I think.
Was that just on his own?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, think it's probably through most of the night at this point.
I'm not gonna sleep. So whether anybody else takes watch or whatever, like I'm not sleeping.
Savaris tries to tell everybody to rest as much as they can.
Who aside from Bardoor, is anyone else going to take watch?
I would say I was like I'll tell him I'll take watch. And if Silvares, says, "Oh, get some rest," then that's whenever I would just ignore him. I would like maybe close my eyes and then just ignore him.
Guess we're watching together.
Claire and Cassette, you can kind of bed down.
Is Silvarius still standing up, or is he eventually gonna sit down?
He stays standing. He's defiant against the earth.
Claire looks both tired and jittery, but before she goes back to where her bedroll was before they were all woken up, she will come up to Silvarius and just kind of lowly whisper to him, "I know blue dragons aren't your kind, but I just want to make sure, are you okay?"
His eyes, because he's staring off and kind of into the dark, his eyes kind of look down at her. And look back up and out. He just says,
I'm fine.
It wouldn't seem to it makes sense for Silvarius, but not with the way that he was looking at it earlier.
She kind of just squints at him a little bit, and then kind of realizing that this is just how Silvarius is, she's going to reach out and just pat him gently on the forearm, and well, it's okay if you're not okay. And I think at this point, if you needed to talk about anything, I'd hazard to say that we're all friends at this point. And with that, she'll just kind of smile up at him. Her eyes are still a little watery, and she'll go and curl up on her bedroll, but it definitely looks like she probably doesn't get any kind of rest. She's still very jittery.
Yeah, Cassette tries to lay down. But I don't know how much. I mean, she has a restless sleep. She probably can get to sleep, but keeps waking up and kind of like checking her surroundings.
Let's have perception from Silvaris and Bardoor.
19.
9.
There's a pretty stony quiet between the pair of you as you just sort of stare out into the cavern around you, lit up by the flickering firelight and the two candles on either side. The hulking form of the dragon sits right at the edge of the firelight. It just sort of looms over your minds a little bit. You don't see anything. After a little while, the little squeaks and scratches that you had heard previously kind of come back. You also hear from Cassette. You kind of see her roll over every now and then, like tugging at the bedroll and trying to find some measure of comfort on the hard ground. Every now and then she sort of looks up a bit bleary-eyed, and there's just sort of a brief exchange of looks to, everything's still okay? Yes, okay. And then sort of she forces her eyes shut. Based on the breathing pattern from Claire, you think she's struggling to sleep as well, but seems to drift off every now and then. You haven't had many opportunities to see Eska in her trances because, often when you're in town, she disappears off into a tree. But certainly she doesn't usually lie down like this, and her breathing seems a little faltering and uncomfortable. And you can see that she seems to be laying awkwardly, and it's hard to tell if that's exactly why she's lying like that. You can only see it from, you can see her back. But it doesn't look comfortable. But eventually, a few hours pass. It should be something resembling morning. It's very hard to gauge time with no sun. Bador, you're probably the most experienced with this, so you have a better understanding of the passage of time in the caves. So Varys, you have very little idea. Eventually, you see Eska start to stir, and that's really the first indication that it might be time to start moving.
Is the dragon still there?
Make a perception check.
That's Eska's first thing when she wakes up. 8.
Okay. Initially, you sort of you're deep in focus, having done a good job for several hours of blocking it out. Your mind goes back to the dragon. You open your eyes, and you can't see it. And then there's a moment of clarity, and you realize you haven't moved. You're still looking at the wall. As you turn around, you see beyond the embers of the fire. You see a dark shape still at the edge of the chasm.
So she'll get up and she'll, if possible, she'll try and reinvigorate the fire with Druidcraft.
Yeah,
Just to like, just for a little bit of morning warmth. She's kind of feeling a bit creaky.
Everyone, with the exception of Bado, does complete a long rest. Gradually, over a little period, Claire and Cassette, you wake. You see bright light as Eska has got the fire going up pretty well again. Nobody is cooking bacon. The cold still clings.
I'll toss a shrew on the fire. That'll be breakfast for me. What did was it a shrew? I can't remember what I caught now. It was pretty measly, whatever it was.
You had a chipmunk, and then I think a couple of other things, maybe some squirrels.
I
I
popped
had
the
a shrew though. We don't know.
I popped the chipmunk on a stick and just roasted it over the fire. I guess she'll also try and use a little water from her canteen to just sort of remove enough of the blood so she doesn't look too scary.
You look scary. Like I said, there's a big gash in the armor as well as the your actual body.
I guess once Claire stirs, she'll probably pull the armor off and just wander over and say, Claire, I've seen you. Do you think there's anything you could do about this?
Claire kind of yawns, and you can see there's still some dark circles under her eyes, and she kind of groggily takes the armor as she just mutters Mourning back to her, and kind of turns the armor over in her hands a little bit, and then just says, "Yeah, this should be no problem."
Do you want some chipmunk? There's there's at least half left here.
She looks a little queasy when she offers her that, and just shakes her head. She holds her hand over the split in the armor, and a gold glow comes from her palm, and she just kind of slowly takes it down the rip and casts mending on it. And it takes about 1 minute for it to seal back up.
Oftentimes, when Claire has used this, you see the item looks good as new. Here, there's there's almost like a scar in the armor that will serve as a reminder.
Eska snatches it back and says, I could have done that. No,
I mean,
she says, she doesn't say that.
it
She says,
it looks
thank
good,
you.
and you know, like it will. It looks almost as good as new, save for
So for a
this
little scar.
a scar.
Yeah, she kind of nods and says, thank you, perfect.
And
she says that sincerely.
looking up at her and noticing where she tried to use a little bit of water to clear the blood off, she just kind of points at Eska's face and says, I could help a bit with that too if you like. I know it's not as good as a bath, but I can at least get some of it off of you.
That probably isn't a bad idea in case we come across any... I don't know how I look, but I imagine it's not great.
It's best if I maybe just clean you up a bit.
Go ahead.
And she'll stand up and just kind of hover her hands over the blood on Eska and cast Prestidigitate until at least most of it is gone. She probably can't get quite all of it, but...
Yeah, Eska doesn't sort of, lift stuff up to get stuff under the surface, but she's okay with just the surface stuff gone. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, Eska looks slightly less dead now.
And thank you for everything you did. We're all pretty lucky to have you here.
Her cheeks turn red, and she just kind of looks down at the ground like she doesn't really know what to say, and just kind of mumbles a quick, thank you.
And I think Eska kind of feels like that's about as much interaction as she can take, so she starts, chewing on her chipmunk again and heading back to pack up her stuff.
And real quick, Claire will also look over to Cassette and offer to do the same thing, anything that needs mending or any scorch marks that need cleaning up.
She accepts and is very grateful. And when it's done, I think she looks back down at her armor and realizes it's still rusted. And
Yeah, the armor didn't change a lot.
No.
he's a little bit disappointed that it didn't do.
You actually prestidigitated it and made it look worse.
Yeah, if anything, it looks flakier now.
Moved a layer of dirt that was holding it together a little bit.
She just sighed. Yeah, I didn't think that was gonna work.
You're able to get the sort of the scorch marks off of Cassette's skin. However, the shield, it's not just a case of something on the surface. It's like the paint has been burnt up.
It's still, I mean, like if I test it, it's still sturdy enough to.
Yeah, it's still a standard shield. It just the holy symbol of Eldath that you kind of like rely upon is looking half burnt up. So yeah, you've all packed up your stuff.
Savaris kind of walks up and says,
Now that we're all awake, shall we continue? Remember, we're here for orcs. It's far from over.
Just from our experiences last night, do I get the impression it would be difficult to push this dragon?
For you, yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You can try.
Yeah. As we're kind of leaving, Eska attempts to lever the dragon over the edge.
Athletics, sorry.
12. Surprisingly average.
So you kind of get up next to the wing and try and give a shove, and you definitely make some headway, but it's a pretty chunky beast.
Are we just gonna leave this here?
Because I would turn to Silverius. And...
Yeah, same. Claire looks at Silverius.
he stops and he looks over. He looks at them looking at him. He's had a night to ponder on it a little bit, and he breaks from the line, and he heads over to next to Eska. He does pull out a dagger though, right before, and he wants to chink a scale off.
Okay.
Just one singular.
It's easy enough.
And he takes that and he puts it in a pouch.
Eska says, "Could you do that again?"
You can.
He pulls his dagger out, and he takes and chinks another scale off. And he's kind of looking at it, and he puts it in his pouch.
You're standing awfully close to a cliff. For somebody that's not very good at resisting the gust spell.
Is that Eska? Or is that
I wasn't sure.
Rich?
Oh, that was me. That was me, Eska. No, Eska sighs and slips out her dagger and attempts to pry one off herself.
Your dagger struggles.
Eska throws her dagger into the chasm.
It doesn't struggle that bad. You get through it eventually.
Okay. After yesterday and the... Eska makes a mental note to give this a good sharpening.
Yes, you are able to obtain a single small scale. And actually, Silveris, you notice as you kind of like hold it up and look at it, it looks pretty nice next to your armor.
Claire is gonna come up behind both of them and kind of just tug on Silvarius' sleeve. Do you think you could pry one off for all of us? I think it would be worthwhile to have a memory of this.
His face doesn't change, but he pries off 2 additional scales, hands them to Claire. As he's doing that, he just says, "Corset." And then his eye goes over to Eska, and it goes back forward, and he peels one scale off and does like he doesn't hand it to her, but it does like a short little toss at her.
Once
He
he's
does-
done that, Eska kind of leans down next to the body and puts her shoulder against it expectantly.
He puts his hand on the body, and before he starts to push, he just says a couple of words. As his hand's resting on it, he says,
Chromatic. They are different from my bloodline. Yet we come from the same origin. What we did was right.
and he goes in to help shove with Eska.
As he's helping and saying that, Eska's eyes narrow. She doesn't say anything.
Narrow suspiciously. Do I catch it?
Make a
Focus
perception,
heavily.
or no, make insight. Yeah,
15.
I'd say you see that. Exactly what it means, you aren't 100% sure.
Yeah, they narrow specifically when you say different bloodlines but the same origins.
With some effort, the two of you are able to start shifting the body. Eventually, enough of it kind of it gets to that tipping point, and Eska, you're alert enough still to realize that if you stay where you are, there's a good chance the wing might take you with it, and you sort of back out and let Silvarius give it a final shove.
That's Gust.
And it sort of slowly tips, and you can hear rocks cracking from underneath it and tumbling down into the pit below, and eventually the body sort of with a distinct lack of dignity flops over, and the last thing you see is eerily reminiscent as you see the head just is the last thing sort of poking over the top of the ledge before it disappears. And there's a series of bumps and cracks as it descends, and it takes a long time before you eventually hear a thud. And then there's a moment, and then you feel like you might hear some slightly louder chittering noises coming from the bottom there. So you you're able to head off. Bardor sort of takes a good sort of 10-15. Not really interested in slowing down for anybody at the moment, it would seem. And you head off beyond the chasm, through past the candle, and off down through another narrower tunnel again, as it shrinks from about 20 feet down to about 10 feet again. The ceiling dropping down, you see again some areas where some stalactites have been sort of smashed down, and some remnants on the ground, indicating that they had been there. Eventually, you get to a very narrow section, barely more than 5 feet, and it looks like there's a fork in the road. But you can clearly see that to the right, where it's wider, more like 20 feet, there's a big cave-in. But the path continues off to the left, and you can see the light from one of the candles beyond, so you know that's a good way to go. But you see this rockfall that seems to have obscured the path.
Can I look at that? Like that cave in, see like how long ago that was? Maybe if
Yeah.
it was natural or anything like that? I have stone cunning.
Yeah, which lets you what? Double proficiency?
Make an intelligence check. Oh boy. Whenever you make an intelligence history check related to the origin of stonework, you're considered proficient in the history skill and add double your proficiency bonus to the check.
Yeah. Give me a history check with instead of your normal -1, you can have a +5.
14.
Probably not natural. And looking at it, it looks like it's definitely collapsed down. There was a path here that has been caved in. There is this narrower route that has been that kind of might go to the same destination. It's kind of hard to. I mean, like I said, you can see the blue, like the candle light flickering, going down the narrow path that's only about 5 feet wide. So you're only somewhat concerned.
Considering it doesn't look natural, and this area is getting a little bit more narrow, it does, like, just keep your eyes open.
Looking at this other pathway, does it look like a natural pathway, or is it carved into like a reroute cave?
It looks natural. I mean, again, you see some stalagmites and stalactites that have been smashed with intent to clear.
Savarius just kind of readies his sword maybe a little bit more than he had it for this Y.
Yeah, bow out.
Yeah, definitely ready. And I would say should maybe try to take it slow through this part.
Caution should be observed.
Did you want to go into our more stealthy formation? I can just drop back behind Bader and we keep a little space.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
So I could basically Bader can go like whatever amount in front of me that I can still see him pretty clearly, and then likewise back to whoever's next.
Yeah, umbral vision.
Makes it hard to see. Makes him hard to see.
How hard?
Impossible.
Gosh.
I mean, I suppose that would technically be a problem, however far ahead of us you are.
Yeah. Make a perception check, Eska.
Is this to see if I've already
Sniffles.
lost him?
I was
No.
never here.
17.
Okay. You feel like you can, like normally you can hear Bardor pretty well, even when you can't see him.
I've got used to the smell of him as well. There's a
Exactly.
slight odor of old cheese. And this morning
let's
he's particularly
have-
pungent because he has also been drinking heavily. I can smell the alcohol.
That's true. Let's have everybody roll stealth for me. which would be disadvantage for 4 of you, which I think is a record. Wow.
What?
Whoa.
Wow.
Disadvantage.
Dang.
Wait.
Wow.
Eska loses sight of Savaris.
That's a 1 in 400 right there.
Wow.
I can't believe it. I wasted on this.
Wow. Look at Eska.
Yeah.
I've lost myself as well. I think I'm completely alone at this point.
Claire and Cassette just look at each other like, where
Bonk.
did everyone go?
So,
I have 15.
okay. Well, that's convenient then. So, yes, Eska, you are able to. You can't see him, but you can hear him. And so but you do need to still stay within about 15 to 20 feet to maintain that.
He keeps walking into the wall and stuff.
That helps. That's some impressive rolls. So, Bardo, you lead down the passageway. Go ahead and make a perception roll for me.
7.
Okay. How far back is everyone from Eska? Out of curiosity.
So to help the guys behind, like I'll have my cloak like wrapped in front of me more, but I'll leave it kind of off my shoulder in the back so that from the front I appear dark, but from the back you can kind of see my arm, which is pretty bright. I mean, you know, it's not like giving off light, but like it's easier to catch than a, you know.
Dark cloak.
Yeah.
So, Bador, you as you come around a corner, you can see one of the what you assumed was one of the candles. It actually is, at least from here, appears to be a naturally occurring rock formation that glows approximately the same color as the candles. Sticking out of the ground, it's maybe 4 feet tall, translucent, and just give off this slightly throbbing glow. Just in front of the rock formation, you see what looks like it could be a pile of bones. If you had to guess. And then off to the right, you see a wider path, maybe 15, 20 feet wide, that also seems to have caved in.
And that, like, it's headed towards the other one, potentially?
Could well be. Yeah.
Do I see the light?
Yeah, you can see the light.
I guess I'll quickly turn and just put my finger up to my lips in what I hope is a universal gesture of keep as quiet as you can. But what is probably code for kill Butter.
Yeah, we've already established that's what that means. I know I'm a little bit of ways, but I would like to actually go take a look at that bone pile to get a feeling of what it might be.
I'm just going to follow up to the rock where he was and just try and keep him in sight.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to look at them to see if they look fresh.
So, looking at them, they look fairly well picked. If you had to guess, you'd say there's probably too many bones for one person. They do look like they're probably humanoid bones. Given that they've been picked pretty well clean, it's going to be very hard to know how old they are. But you can make an investigation check to sort of see if you can figure out what they were. That's okay. 9 is actually good enough. So you find one of the skulls. One skull seems to have been crushed. Very hard to identify. The other one is in better condition. You would guess, based on bone structure, could be orcish. Maybe even something like Goliath. It's a very sort of wide, thick jaw, very strong-looking jawline, but that's about all you can tell right now.
I will look back to the party and just tell them to come on then.
I'll keep moving slowly.
Let's have the rest of you four coming through make a perception check as well, please.
5. Severius is blocking you.
Oops.
7.
11.
I think it probably would have been 17.
Yeah, it would have. That's fine. As you are coming through, most of you are sort of occupied by this really nice looking crystal that seems to be glowing. And Bardor is sort of like checking out the corridor ahead. Eska, you kind of sniff, and you have a brief flashback to the sort of the ozone smell of the night before. And instinctively you look to the right, and you don't see anything there. But you're getting a very strong smell of that, the buildup of lightning. And we are going to take a little break here. A little 5-minute break.
How dare you?
Savaris goes over to the corner and you hear the faint trickling of water.
Eska says, "No, there's electricity around." Eli, give us a little taste of Uri pronouncing his name, just so I can have the pleasure of watching it back with the subtitles at some point in the future.
Get your timestamp ready. Hold on.
Well, hello, Ori von Vivelnir van Wazeldorf. Such a pleasure to meet you.
It is going to really struggle with that.
Wow,
I really struggled with that. We never did find the princess, so I think that's...
No, I didn't really find the apocalypse either, to be honest.
What a waste of time.
Did you just randomly say time, Rich?
No, I said what a waste of time.
What a waste of time. All I heard was time.
Oh, sorry.
That was strange.
Time.
He was trying not to waste time.
Well, yeah, I guess it is.
I thought he was saying that's our 5-minute break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit pushy, but sure. Alrighty.
Just to jump back in, unless you want to bring us back in, Phil, but it's too late because I'm already saying it. I will message instantly forward into Bardur's head, and I will say, "Careful, there's something here." And then, unless anything springs out, 6 seconds later, I will message the same thing back to, I guess Silverius is the closest.
Okay. Nothing springs out.
So I messaged that back to Silverius as well.
You both can respond.
Something smells wrong.
Yeah.
So, Eska, you look to your right into the corridor there, the collapsed corridor.
Mm-hmm.
The smell is present, but it's not strong. It's not like when you got zapped or anything. And as you kind of peer down there, you see something glistening.
I'm just going to message back forward to Bardur. Just come back this way. There's something down here. And I'll point at the glistening thing.
Sivaris, you look over, you see Bardur come back, and you see Eska and Bardur looking down the corridor. You can't see what they're seeing, though, because the light doesn't go down there.
What is this change?
How big is it?
It looks like it's just caught up among the rocks. Hard to gauge size. A couple of inches that you can see right now.
Is it like, does it look like the candle?
No,
Silverius,
it's just
some light?
Unsheaths his sword and full on white light.
which sword?
He unsheaths his normal sword.
Cast light. In amongst the rocks, there's now several little glistening things. Some greens and blues, a little bit of yellow. Might be gems.
I kind of say, can you smell that? Why can I smell?
As you kind of all take a sniff, you do get odor of dragon. It's reminiscent of last night for everybody now.
Just out of precaution, Silvarius takes out his Breath of Bahamut sword, and he's actually got his shield strapped on his back, but he's got both swords in hands.
Nice.
That's all amongst the rubble?
Yeah, where the cave-in has sort of happened. In amongst the rubble down there.
Silvarius utters,
Hickson.
and the Breath of Bahamut ignites. and he's got his lit sword and he's got his Breath of Bahamut sword burning just as
Yeah.
bright as it can. And he's kind of looking around the ceiling, the floor, everywhere, and he's just checking for signs of our previous opponent.
Make
Or
survival or investigation. Did you see it
22.
hover on that one? There are scratch marks on the ground here, going both left the way that you have just come from, and right the way that Bardor was headed, and then into this area here that look like they could be consistent with dragon claws potentially moving through the area.
He just says,
Cause for alarm.
and he motions towards everything that he sees.
Definitely gripping her hammer tightly. Claire's looking around at everything and just in a low voice to everyone, that was a young dragon, right? Does anyone know how long dragons stay with their parents?
Silvera, she probably would know. It was a little hard to age that dragon, but you get the impression it was fairly young, probably less than 20 years old, though beyond that, hard to say exactly. You would know that once a dragon is old enough to catch its own food, its parents pretty much disown it.
This one was most likely alone.
Unless it has a mate, of course.
Yeah, she was gonna say she looks relieved, and then a split second later, her eyes get wider again and says, "What age do they take a mate?"
Look like a 2-bedroom cave, a studio. Like, what are we? Square footage we got here.
It's a fair point. I know it wasn't supposed to be, but it is. As you kind of look at it, it feels like 2 would be kind of tight. Just based on the size of the dragon you fought.
As they're kind of discussing that, Eska kind of creeps forward towards the blocked off wall.
Okay. And it's as you move forward, you cast a pretty striking shadow because there is this very bright white light burning off the weapon.
She kind of almost in spite of herself just walks up to the wall and begins to sort of like, do they look like, now I'm closer, do they look like what they look like from afar, like they're gems?
Yeah, as you get closer, there's lots of just like regular rock here, but you also are able to pick out, now that you're closer, you see some gems in amongst the rubble, and you have a little experience with jewelry, correct?
Yeah.
So as you look, make a jeweler's tools check, please.
15.
You sort of eye them up and you're like, looks like maybe aquamarine and tourmaline, various shades of tourmaline. You kind of just poke a stone away to get a better look at one of them, and you see what looks like a single, fairly sizable black pearl in there as well. And then some smaller ones mixed in.
She absent-mindedly begins to start pulling them free where
Okay.
possible and just putting them in her bag.
Yeah, what's everyone else doing as Eska starts rummaging through the stones here?
I'm just gonna keep an eye on stuff.
Cassette's watching to make sure nothing is coming up behind us, and she was kind of last in the group.
I mean, I guess I'll ask Alvarius, is this like a den then? Is this where it lived?
I had two things I was going to think about, and that was actually one. But also this crystal, if it symbolized anything, if I could understand why it was glowing.
As far as the possible dragon den is concerned, you know that blue dragons are more typically found in deserts, but are known to venture into sort of badlands type areas where there's a lot of rock formation, and you don't really know what's above you anymore because you're not sure exactly where you are. So it's hard to gauge if this would be standard kind of area for it. But now that, as you see, Eska keeps pulling out gems, you would think that a blue dragon would be fond of gems, would be, especially a young one, would be quite liable to try and make a, the startings of a horde using gems and rocks. As for the crystal that you see, make a nature check.
Oh.
So you're not sure what it is, but you think it's probably naturally occurring. The folks who have been putting down the candles decided to not add a candle here because there was already something here that seemed to do the job.
It certainly has the makings of a lair or a horde. Not a typical location, but certainly indicative. And the smell.
I point down to the bones and say, well, it looks like there may have been a run-in with some orcs here. I don't necessarily know if this was all of the orcs or not, but we could potentially use this to our advantage if we could mimic a blue dragon somehow. If anybody has any tricks that could help out in that regard.
My eyes kind of go to Eska.
Eska's not paying any attention to any of this. She's just like prying out gems and putting them in her bag.
To that point, you, as you're picking through, you find about 11 of the large, almost fist-sized tourmaline and aquamarine gems. You'd need to get them valued, but they are going to be worth quite a lot, you would suspect. In addition, you have the one black pearl. There's a large number of assorted other smaller gems. The dominant colors are still very much blues and greens, but there are some yellows and even a couple of reds in there, especially amongst the smaller ones. But the larger ones are all in the sort of the blue and green spectrum. Make an investigation check while you're ferreting through.
7.
Okay. You're focused on the gems, and you just, when you get something that's clearly not a gem, you just sort of throw it behind you and don't really pay any attention. You sort of throw one thing back, and there's a little ting 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 sound as it ends up slowly rolling towards Silvarius. Yeah, that's it.
I pay it no
That's what
mind. I guess I just will take everything I can see, unless
Okay.
anybody stops me, and then
I'll take a look at that thing that is heading towards.
Okay. You bend down and pick up what appears to be a small vial that, because it wasn't quite gemmy enough, Eska's just sort of cast aside, and was fortunate not to have smacked with a rock. Inside, you see a rather dense-looking liquid. Appears to be a rather unfortunate dark greeny brown and distinctly sludgy with a cork stopper.
I will. I basically am holding it up for the whole world to see because I think I'm like a little over 4 feet tall, and Silvarius is like close to 7. So if Claire can see it, maybe she can take it.
Yeah, she'll walk over and just hold out her hand to take it from him. Yeah, she'll look at it through the vial first, see if she sees anything or if she can identify anything that way, and if she can't, she'll pop open the cork and give it a good old sniff.
It doesn't smell nice. It has a almost swamp-like odor, decaying plant matter and moss, and there's an acrid undertone that sort of burns your nose a little.
she wrinkles her nose as she's sniffing it, but you can almost see like little clockwork like behind her eyes as she's trying to like place each of the smells. So yeah, after giving it a good deep sniff, she'll stick her pinky finger down in
Yep.
there.
The taste is equally as bad as the smell. It is pungent. Like, try to clean your tongue with your teeth to just get it off. But in doing so, you feel like what you have in your hand is a potion of resistance to poison. You don't feel any particular benefits from it, being of dwarvish descent. But that's what you suspect you have found.
Well, I think it's a potion of poison resistance. But to be honest, neither I or Bardor would probably find a use for it. Dwarves are naturally a little more mm, capable of fighting off poison in their blood. And she just kind of recorks it and then holds it holds it out just in general. Would any of you like to hold on to it?
Eska's still sifting.
Cassette kind of looks back and forth. She'll slowly put her hand out.
Claire will just drop it right into her palm.
Turning her head, just her eyes are going back and forth between everybody. Okay, I'll go.
Eska, before you move on, give me one final investigation. As you sort of feel like you've exhausted your supply of gems here.
Yeah, for a minute, I kind of keep scrabbling, even once I've found all the surface gems, just in the hopes.
Yep.
14.
Okay. So as you scrabble around, you get towards where one of the larger rocks that has sort of collapsed down meets the ground, and you see a hand and most of an arm that's crushed underneath it, and you can see in this hand there is a piece of paper, like parchment paper.
Does it look like the kind of paper that you touch and you die?
I mean, you suspect that's what happened to him.
But not because he touched the paper.
But yes, exactly. Cause and effect is hard to discern here. He definitely appears to be deceased, based on the fact that there's a 4-foot rock on top of him.
I do a quick medicine check and discern that he's probably not still alive.
I'm going to save you the roll on that.
I try
Appears
and
to
give
be
him
deceased.
CPR for a few minutes, but considering I can't find his head, I kind of give up pretty quick.
Yeah, it's
And
tricky.
I guess I just sort of pick up the paper and glance at it, see if there's anything
Okay.
written on it.
There is. As you pull it out and you unravel it, you realize this is a spell scroll.
I lose interest and I drop it back in his hand. No, I guess if I feel like I've exhausted everything else over there in terms of gems, that would be my point at which I would turn around and just sort of absently hand it to, I guess, Silverius.
Wow, that was begrudging.
She wants to give it to anybody else, but she's like, this is kind of his kind of thing. So she just kind of like tosses it in his direction and says, well, should we continue?
Silverius, having 2 swords out, is unable to catch it.
He goes to try and catch it, but
Hits
instead he
one,
just slices it up into lots of pieces.
Edward Scissorhands.
I guess seeing that he can't catch it, I would probably sort of hold it out in his direction.
He utters the words, and his flaming sword goes out. And he resheaths it and takes it.
She just kind of shrugs and hands it to him.
Claire would like to look over his shoulder, but she only comes up to his waist. So
I could
The
cast
desire
levitate
is
on you
there.
if you like.
This is a scroll of Spirit Shroud.
Claire scoffs. She can do that already.
But yeah, so
So Varus whips out a cell phone and starts looking through his spell list.
that is a
Not again, Silvarius.
Quiet, I'm reading.
so it's a third level scroll. So Eska, just to confirm, you have 11 large
11,
gems.
11 fist-side tourmalines.
Yep.
One
And
black pearl.
aquamarines, combination of the two. One black pearl. And then a large assortment of smaller gems. If you give me another jeweler's tools, I can give you some rough guidelines based on that's the value based on how well you roll.
24.
The larger gems you think are probably worth in the region of 250 gold each.
Zoinks!
The pearl is probably more like 300. Small gems probably total something like 400.
Does Eska let everybody know how much she thinks this is worth?
Eska doesn't mention anything about it. Eska just says, so, onwards?
To be clear, to the other four, you saw her scrabbling around and shoving stuff in her bag. It wasn't subtle.
Yeah, she wasn't doing it secretively.
Yeah, I mean but she didn't offer like, oh, this is gonna make us rich. It's more like we just know she's just picked up a bunch of gems.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So, should we head on?
You seem to be finished digging around.
Yeah, I think I've finished digging around.
After you.
Age before beauty, Bardo? Actually, I might be older than Bardo, I have no idea. Probably not. Bardo seems like he's, not a youngling.
I just give a wry smile and walk ahead.
So, you continue on. And Bardor, you lead on for approximately 10 a.m. You stop for a lunch break a couple hours later. It's still kind of cold and dingy, and you're just following the candles through the cave system. At one point, Bardor, you see a large sort of ox-like creature. There's the wall kind of opens up, and there's a large chasm that drops away again, deep, sort of 80 feet across this chasm. You see 4 or 5 of these large underground cattle called Rothe. Don't see anyone who appears to be herding them, so they could just be wandering free. It's unclear. It's not unusual for Rothe to be down here. They are sort of like the cows of the Underdark, basically. And you can see that they kind of there's another one of those crystals, like near the dragon den that they're sort of congregating around at the moment, and there appears to be some bioluminescent fungus, not unlike you saw in the kobold caves. You suspect they're probably feeding off those. You kind of point it out, and everyone kind of looks at them and says, "Hey, look, cows." But I mean, there's nothing you can really do from here. They're not a threat. It's just, honestly, it's kind of nice to break up the monotony of rock everywhere. A non-threatening creature. And as you get towards evening of the second day, you become aware of a low but persistent dripping sound. It just seems to be sort of permeating the air. Just slow and steady. Every now and then you hear some chirps. And you feel like maybe that means you're, getting near some sort of water. Anyone who wishes to may make a smell check. don't know if anyone has any particular benefits to smell, but it would be a smell check, which is perception.
With a 12.
A 5. Claire still has the smell of that potion in her nose. She can't seem to get away from it.
Yeah, it's just burn off
So
some
this
of
is
your
a
hairs.
4.
Mine's a natural 6, so
18.
Yeah.
My beard hairs are tickling.
Yeah, we've got a
Nose.
4, 5, and 6 there. That's impressive. So Varys and Eska, you pick up a slightly acrid smell. Again, unpleasant on the nose. Beyond that, it's hard to say. Bardor, you leading the way. You come to the path seems to open up a little wider than it had been. Still, it's quite inconsistent, but more like 30 or 40 feet across now. You see, the dripping gets a little louder, and you notice to the left-hand side of the tunnel you're in, there is a puddle. Now that you've been made aware of it, definitely seems to have this unpleasant acidic smell. And puddles, I mean, this is quite a large puddle. Once you get a glimpse of it, you can kind of see it. This puddle goes on along the side of the path for maybe 20 feet, 25 feet. Given that the path's really wide, it's not an issue. Like, you can get past it without a problem. But it is, obviously, it's a little, something new to be concerned with.
So as you get closer to it, does the smell pick up?
Yes, yeah, as you get closer, the scent is definitely stronger.
Do I have any idea what this is?
I mean, you would guess possibly just polluted water in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it seems to, it's got this, the smell is strong and unpleasant. You can all smell it. It's pretty obvious that this is icky.
Ceiling heights in here.
At the moment, it's about 20 feet.
Okay. And above that puddle, anything?
There is a stalactite that seems to be actively dripping. In fact, it's probably a few. Up ahead of you, you do not see any candles. At the moment, Silverius and Cassette, you're kind of relying on guidance from your colleagues unless you have your own light source out, which I think mostly what you'd been doing is just traveling between them and kind of hoping for the best in the darker spots.
I'm still going to maintain just a small light radius, but definitely seeing that we ran out of light, stop and just kind of question out to Barder.
Definitely an uneasy feeling about this.
So, I mean, in theory, based upon the fact there's about 50 feet behind, there's a light. In theory, based upon this map, the other light should be to the right. Here.
Yeah. And as you ponder exactly what that means, we will end for the night.
It's so rough playing a race that can't see in the dark.
It's rough, but it's kind of cool because it gives a element of, something to think about.
Mm.
So this is my first 5th edition character without dark vision.
Neither of my first two had dark vision. It was a pain in the butt. Coalesce eventually
You
got
mean it was an
Goggles
interesting
of the Night.
character decision? I'm trying to decide if this puddle is important, or
uneasy
if
cliffhanger.
Phil has just decided that a puddle is an encounter. He felt like he went too far with the dragon. He was like, "This week we'll just give him a puddle and we'll just let it go."
It's probably a
In
gelatin,
extreme details.
giant gelatinous cube.
Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. We will pick up next time as the Hand of Aegis deal with a puddle. What could possibly go wrong? Thanks for watching. We'll see you then for more Fables from the Pickled Quipper. Goodbye.